Absolutely, we actually had a big discussion with the team regarding how they approach this vulnerability and how they approach this gender dimension and equality dimension, because it's not about numbers, how many people participate, because currently in Ukraine, you do not have any issues of having more women on board, because we do not have men. They're or fighting, or they just do not want to go to the employment services because they will be registered, and they don't want to be registered because for them it means to be mobilized to the army. So usually it's a challenge to have more female on board, but here it was an opposite challenge to have more men. And in Ukraine we have at the moment one more vulnerable group. This is veterans. We have them since 2014, but now it's even more challenging. And that is, again, we had a big discussion with the project, so how you approach this group. Because it's very difficult psychologically, people are injured mentally and physically, and it's not enough now just to be a good facilitator. You have to have a proper therapist or psychological support, and in employment services they have those people with special skills to approach this audience. When we were talking to trainers, one of them told me, we had this very difficult situation during the trainer, because they had a training for veterans, and people just really not in a stable mental position, and the only thing that helped her to deliver the training, because her husband is fighting himself, and she said, I do understand you because I'm a little bit a similar position. So, but if you do not have this type of experience, it's very difficult to talk to these people. But it's not really about evaluation, it's about how you deliver your project. But we as evaluators need to cover this aspect as well. And we need to deliver this recommendation to the project. In a midterm evaluation, it was easier because we delivered recommendation for the second half of the project. Here it was not possible because it's the end of the project, but they were promised to have more support from the NIDA to go for the second phase of the project. So our recommendations were considered the second, the extension of the project rather than the project itself. Yes.
So when you plan for the semi-structured interviews with high officials, which are individual interviews, or project management unit, would you consider physically visiting the respondent, or would you opt out for the online option? Because sometimes I have a feeling that, okay, I understand the benefits of in person, but the person with the busy schedule, if you ask them for the in-person meeting, it would just give them more trouble than save them more time.
I always prefer in person, even in our situation, because you can see reaction and you can see people unprepared. Again, in our case, you need to be sure that your stakeholders has a shelter nearby, and you do not put a person in risk. So, but it's probably not your case. So, but in person always works better, always.
Yeah, I understand for the beneficiaries, for example.
But for ministry as well, for me, if a stakeholder refuses to meet you in person, for me, it's not like a pure sign, but a small bell ringing in my head that maybe something is not good with the project, because if the project if the project is doing a good job, they usually want to meet evaluators, because very often they mix you a little bit with the donor, and they try to deliver the message they're happy with the project and they want to have continuation, or they would like to go to the study tour, especially if it's Danish project, or American or European. So if the project is really doing good job, ministries always want to meet you and to deliver this message, because they want to have more projects. So if it's possible, try to meet in person. I don't know, in our case, they're usually in the offices. It's unusual for officials not to work offline, not in the office, not to be in the office. Okay. It's more common for NGOs who can work from any places or for businesses, but officials are like in majority of cases in the office. So they will be maybe feel more comfortable in their like environment, I would say. But it depends.
I just had like 2 weeks ago the case when I was the respondent. Like we did like research, we received research grant, and UNDP hired external evaluator who was evaluating this process, and the evaluator asked me to meet like in one of the meeting rooms of the hotel. So I had to travel 80 kilometers for the half-an-hour interview and then back, and all the time I had a question: why didn't it? Could have been online, and I had a what if my respondents have the same feeling, and that's for that reason they are annoyed or they are closer.
In this case, it's fair enough to offer to cover at least transport costs, if it's possible, as for you as for evaluator. But your time, yeah, I understand.
Yeah. Organization, that wasn't the problem. It was just like I had to. Well, if you go opt for in person, what you mentioned, I guess it's better for the evaluator to go and visit.
In this case, absolutely. As evaluator, we usually prefer to go to the office or to the place where people is located. But for the focus group, you usually just gather people in one place, because online again. Because for me, online it's more difficult to have online focus group because of facilitation and discussion. So you can just switch off the microphone. So But definitely we usually travel to the place. So, any other questions? So, but maybe not questions. If you want to share your experience, like Maria did just now, so just feel free. So, case studies, very short, and then we will move to another task. As I mentioned from the very beginning, for me, case study is more like the way to present the way of to present the results of your evaluation. It's when you have limited number of beneficiaries and you want to have a really bright stories. It's usually work for, like in my case, it works when you have a governmental project and you want to tell the story how good you are in delivering your message. So it's not, of course, it's not very representative, but it can show that some success, really a really good impact if you have your case study. They can be different. You can have other descriptive case studies when you just already tell the story what is known. You can explore this story in more details and explore this phenomena and to provide this information to the public, or you can explain why it's happened as it happened. It's actually, when I have my case study, I never try to go very deep into it to think what kind of case study I have, but when I develop evaluation methodology and I have in our project, what we discussed, when we have this 10 or 15 businesses supported, but with grant, it's good to have this case study to explain how this grant supported business in terms of better performance or reaching new markets or whatever. So it's very good, and it's actually quite easy to engage with business because for them, it's a free of charge advertisement. So you just tell the story about the business and they appear in the public, and this is how you can sell them that they need to spend the time with you. Because Susanna actually asked a very interesting question during the break. So how you actually ask people to participate in your interview, to spend your time. So I always try to sell it somehow, not with the money. I always say that I can't promise you that I believe that your suggestions or your messages will be taken into consideration during future interventions, but I can promise you that I deliver your message to officials and to the donor, and I really do this because this is the way why people could be interested in have interview with you, because they can change the situation. This is how you sell those ideas that you need to talk to them, because they can bring more value in terms of spending their time with you, and then the intervention could be better. Again, there is pluses and minuses, pros and cons of this approach. So you can capture real life situation in gems and details. You can help understand the context. It can work well in combination or supplementing other methods, but of course it's very difficult to generalize findings to different contexts or situation of phenomena. So it will be just a very individual story, but very bright one. As an example, I can give this from Inward Investment Fund in the UK. So actually at the moment, as I mentioned, I work for the Northeast Combined Authorities in the UK. It is the way how UK approach decentralization. You probably know that the UK is still the most centralized country in the Europe, but they do a lot of approaches how to decentralize. So they call it devolution. So they have local authorities like Newcastle City Council or Northumberland County Council, but they also have a combined authorities, like in our case, it's 7 different combined authorities. What is interesting here, they have elected mayor, and we do not deal with the public. We just deliver the different projects and programs from very broad range of interventions. So it could be skills development, it's transport, it's business support, it's physical creation of like building of housing. So it's everything. And we have at the moment like 200 plus different projects. And one of them, it's an Inward Investment Fund. When I first came and I've heard about this project, I was like, so surprised, because they actually give grants to businesses to relocate to the area, because Northeast is the most depressive area in the UK. It's mining area. It's very beautiful because it's very, very good, very nice coast. But in terms of economic development, it's the most depressive region. And they try to do their best in terms of development the region. So the all money we have, it's a government money. We have different funds, so-called like investment fund. It is like main bunch of money we've got as a because of the devolution, because we are like the separate combined authorities. And investment funds is the grants that we give to business to be relocated to the area. So when I first heard about this type of grants, my first reaction was, oh my God, it's a market distortion. How you can give this money for certain business just to bring it to the area. And then I realized it's actually, it's a competition. And then in this way, they just attract businesses to be located in the area. I still feel it's a little bit kind of a market distortion, because it's very difficult to, for me, it's difficult to justify why this business should get this grant, but so the way it's how it is. So the business can get this grant from 100,000 to maximum £1 million. And the UK tries at the moment develops all this evaluation of the public funds. And the price of having this devolution money is just to have this kind of evaluation of every single project that was implemented under this budget. So we're just currently in the process of finalizing the local evaluation framework. And it was also very, very misleading for me from the very beginning, because for me, framework is something that defines the general picture, the way how you approach evaluation. In this case, it's just a plan how you will evaluate all those projects in combined authorities. So we need at the moment to develop the plan how we approach all this evaluation. It could be process plus, or impact evaluation. So impact investment fund was selected for having impact evaluation. And at the moment we already had some kind of a story regarding this fund. In concrete business, like we're sure, was one of the 8 grantees. So again, so if you have just 8 grantees, it's good to have a case study, because we can bring the story and we can write actually very bright story regarding this business. This is a business that develop signalization, alarms, different type of alarms, security alarms and fire alarms, and because so it was the beginning of the story. This is screenshot from Northeast final report, and we have this small story about this type of business, and we also will have this impact evaluation, a proper one. We have interviews with all businesses, but we will probably, I am not sure that it will be very sure for having a case study, but maybe another grantees. But this is very good example one in what situation you're having this kind of case study. So I don't know if you can read, it's a little bit small letters, but it's a very general story about this business. And from your perspective, what type of case study do we have here? Yes, absolutely, because it came before we actually even started the evaluation. So we are just telling the story, what we know about this business, how it was relocated, what he's doing, and we will explore more. Yeah, and we're coming back to our project on labor market, and here we probably will have 3 groups. I don't know how we will manage this technically, but at least let's try. We have the second task, more like evaluation. Not description of the project, but description of the evaluation tasks. We have more of them, so it should be enough for everyone. And I will ask you to develop those tools we were discussing today very briefly, because I don't expect you to develop the whole survey, because we have like, again, 20 probably questions, but like general questions. You have the list of evaluation questions, you have the purpose of evaluation. Maybe we can make our life easier, and we will have just 2 groups. We will have one group who will be working on survey, and another group who will be working on a semi-structured interview for on the questions. But remember that we are talking about semi-structured interviews. You can have the number of general questions, but also I can ask you to pick up one of the group of stakeholders and try to draft specific questions for this group, because we discuss these groups like, I don't know, employment services or businesses, or for example, I don't know, ministry. So try to have 2 separate parts in your guide, in your list of questions. One general questions that you will ask almost everyone, and then specific questions for your groups that you will pick up. So any preferences, survey or interviews? So we will divide group like, I don't know, Robert, how should I move you? Because you're just saying in front, so it's up to you. Yeah, so you can, up to you to decide. So these 2 groups. So survey or interview?
I'll do survey.
Okay. First come, first serve. So survey, interviews.
Yes, so we had the task to write the questions for the interview, and we have selected public employment services as a target stakeholder. So we have been discussing this thoroughly, and we realized that there are actually already some very good directions for the questions. So I have tried to write down everything we have been discussed, and I'm inviting the members of my group to add if I have forgotten something. So at first, we think it is very important to introduce the goal of the evaluation and the purpose of the interview, to thank to the person who has decided to allocate some time and energy for our interview, then to ask her to tell us more about the project and the role of their organization and their own individual role in the project. Then to ask if the project has achieved its stated objectives. Related to this, we also think it is important to ask if there are some new challenges which have emerged during the project, and also if the person who is being interviewed is not focusing on the beneficiaries of the project, that we should explicitly ask if the project contributed to meeting the needs of the beneficiaries. So to actually see if the project has contributed to increasing some employment opportunities for the target groups of the project, because we find it very important. Then we think it is very important that they very clearly distinguish the project activities and their everyday activities, so that they should very nicely explain how the project activities go beyond their everyday activities. So in that sense, we would be able to distinguish the results of the project with the results of their everyday work, since their everyday work is funded probably by the state. Then we should also ask how the project has changed the organizational culture in that organization, how some things or processes have actually changed due to the project and the cooperation that happened during the implementation. Also, we think it is very important to refer to sustainability and to include questions related to the plans after project completion and how they actually see the continuation of project activities, what they have done in their organization to enable continuation of these activities, since now they have some more knowledge and experience in certain areas. Also, we think it is important to address the current situation in the labor market, to see what are actually the challenges and some opportunities which are very dynamic and probably changing during the project implementation. Also, we think that we should ask them about cooperation with other institutions involved in the project. And here in this instruction, we have been suggested to especially focus on the cooperation with Danish social partners. And in the end, we would ask them for some lessons learned, best practices, and also policy recommendations based on their experience within the project. So, dear group, if you have something to add, please.
No.
Thank you very much.
Just thank you.
Thank you.
Very good.
Maybe just to add to that general, in my experience, okay, these are questions that you make, but you need to be really experienced interviewer, and actually each of these questions gets sub questions depending on the answer of the interviewee. So that's something that's really important in this type of interviews.
Yeah, absolutely. I will comment a little bit later. Maybe some of the groups would like to add something. That's too deep into this survey. Okay, yeah, so thank you very much. Very good job. Actually, yeah, I understand it's very difficult to develop the whole instrument, the list of questions. I always recommend, because it's definitely stated in the TOR, that it should be structured around OECD DOT criteria. So just write those criteria and for one by one. Actually, you mentioned every one of them, but it will be easier for you when you develop your interview guide, just to remember that you cover every interview. First question you mentioned, like stated objectives. It's just a way, it's logic, sense of how you formulate the question, because most likely if you're talking to employment service, they don't know about the project objectives. So just ordain this objective or formulate it in the way they do understand it. Because usually beneficiaries, or even if you speak to businesses, they do not know project objective or they completely forgot it because it's a project was for 6 years. Employment opportunities, yeah, changes in the processes. Again, the way how you formulate your questions. So because if you ask what was the change in your processes, it will be a little bit difficult for them to understand. So first you need to be very well aware about the processes they deliver, and then what's changed. I really like your questions regarding the sustainability and institutional memory. It's very good one, because I usually ask, so just when I talk to people, I usually ask, just imagine the situation, the project is stopped, it's not expanded. What will you do? And they do understand this question, because if you ask them, what is about sustainability, like, what is sustainability, what should they answer? Yes, they will answer with something, definitely, especially if it's a ministry, they always have an answer, but maybe it's not answer you need. So just try to formulate it easier for people, just for sure that you understand. Regarding the current situation in the labor market, I have a little bit of a doubt here, because actually, do you really need to know this from them? You have desk study, you have all the project materials, most likely reports, you can have this understanding from somewhere, but maybe not from them, because if you ask the employment service about the labor market, you won't be able to ask any other questions.
But maybe it would be interesting to hear their opinion from the supply side, to see actually if there are on their evidence some people from certain areas. So maybe from the supply side, from the aspect of the available workforce in certain fields, maybe it can be relevant.
I would probably recommend to make it more specific, asking how the project contributed to the different, I don't know, processes, or working with different target groups, but not in general about challenges, because it's totally for ages.
Our initial idea was that the project was having some activities that were designed based on a context that was 2 years ago. And meanwhile, the labor force market has shifted or have had some changes. And whom you would ask about those changes if not the public employment service? So our initial idea was to see what were the changes meanwhile after the starting of the project, because one of the objective is to also to formulate recommendations for further improvements. So you need also to see from their side.
Yeah, you just need to link to the project more closely. And yeah, it's actually a good idea always to ask how the project addressed different needs and what the project changed during the implementation. Because if you are talking about COVID and the project started before, definitely the project should change a lot, because I'm sure no one had this risk in their development or in the project design when they started. But now we do have all those, like things, how you will address different changes, like everyone. Still, in the case, they still write COVID as an important factor. I try to explain that it's not a factor anymore, but still, so legacy is still there. So just these changes are still to be captured. So I do not try to criticize it, just like how you formulate things. Coherence is a very good point. I'm always asked about it. It's actually the favorite question of all donors. They always would like to know what they're doing better, But again, do not ask about coherence directly. Just try to formulate what do you see this donor does better. So what is the comparative advantage of this donor? So it will be easier to answer in this case. With lessons learned, it's always, we do ask these questions all the time, but again, I notice that sometimes people do not really understand what does it mean. For me, I try to reformulate, asking, so what you would do the same or better, so what you repeat, or what you definitely do not do in your next project, or something like that. But yes, sometimes, again, it depends on your audience, so just try to be merciful to the people you're talking to just very easy questions. Okay, but very well done, and it wasn't quite messy to your, I know this. Okay, good. Yeah, well done. So next two groups, you have survey. Who would like to start? Who you're looking for behind you? Okay, you would like to start?
Yeah,
okay.
we got 3 groups.
Oh, 3 groups. Yeah, you were shuttling between groups. Okay, up to you.
All right, so for the survey, we went with the stakeholder, the SMEs that received grants for hiring IDPs and vulnerable groups. We decided to go for this group because we were also thinking about administrative stuff that let's say the beneficiary of the evaluation could give us the data in order to contact the SMEs and in order to send them the survey. So just to go to the questions, we started with a few questions regarding, let's say, demographics, introductory questions, such as the name of the SME, the location, and also the industry in which is currently activating. And then we moved on to some more, let's say, economic questions. We are curious regarding the number of employees that are currently hiring, and for these questions we also ask 2 sub-questions: the current number of employees and also the number of employees before February 2022. And we're doing the same also for turnover, the turnover of the SMEs, and also for the profit and the reserved capital, in order to see how much capital the SME is having. And then we're moving to questions that are directly linked with the objectives or with the evaluation questions. So we're asking about the number of IDPs and vulnerable groups that are currently hired in an SME, and also we ask them to specify for each category, IDP and vulnerable group. And also we are asking them what is the expected number for each group for the next year. And from the purpose and objectives of the evaluation, we sensed a strong emphasis on implementing and hampering factors. So we also added in the survey a few questions about that. So first, we have a question on the implementation bottlenecks for the grant. And here, based on the work of the colleagues with the interviews, we pre-select a number of implementation bottlenecks and ask the SMEs to rate them based on the scale. And also we offer them the possibility that if none of the implementation bottlenecks that they actually encounter are not on the pre-selected list, we ask them to specify them in an open question. Then we ask them regarding the factors that facilitate the implementation of the grant, also with scale-ups and also pre-selected list based on previous research on such as document review or interviews. And also we offer them an open question to add other factors that facilitate the implementation of the grant. Then we also move to the other direction, the factors that hamper, using the same logic. Then we move to the impact part, we asked them if they found the contribution of the project useful for, and here we put a table with number of employees, turnover and profit, and we have a scale up for each criteria in order to select which area the grant had the most impact on. And then we have another more specific question regarding the, let's say, impact. Also a preselected list on areas that the contribution affected the most. And then we have a question, let's say, on a combination of sustainability and impact. We're asking, based on the previous list of areas where the grant had the most impact, if they expect the impact to last for the following years. Because the question also impacted sustainability, we move to the sustainability aspect of the questionnaire. So we asked them if they would be able right now to keep the number of employees without the support of the program. We asked them if there's an exit strategy after the completion of the program and the ending of the support. Then we move on to what is the most important needs to implement in order to keep the current number of employees. And here we were thinking about a pre-selected list of factors that they can rate each factor. Then we have a final question regarding sustainability. If they could apply again for a similar scheme as the one financed by ILO, if they would do it again. And finally, we are thinking about some communication questions regarding their communication with the program authorities and also with the public employment services, how they would rate it, but we didn't draft it, so it was just an idea.
Okay, good. Any comments or questions from other groups?
I would have a question, comment that's,
Okay.
as I mentioned, we haven't managed to finish, and like many good aspects that they have taught that we have, if we had worked together, we would have included, then it would have been more full. But yeah, generally, I would give very positive feedback.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, well done. So I will comment on course will raise later. So would you like to present your part, or you have different questions? Did you work with the same group?
We worked as a different group, but
Okay.
I don't think we have a very different question. It's just like I could still share some of the
Yeah, just
strategies
what is
we built.
different in your case?
Yeah, we tried to build as a online version, and we didn't manage to like finish up formulating all the questions. We just brainstormed like what type of questions we should include under each criteria, and we tried to make close-ended as much as possible. And of course, for the options we need more information.
Yeah, of course.
And I guess this key informant interviews or piloting would help to have the most many options to choose from, and we would limit alternative questions for the recommendations part or any additional feedback they have, and we would try to use scales for the meeting expectations and their needs, but not too many scales, not to overwhelm them. So sorry, what we could add. Other than that, some of the things were missing from us and could be added from another group.
Yeah, it's actually good that you added this, because for businesses, I always prefer as many closed questions as possible, because they're not lazy, just do not have time to answer your questions. So, and Robert also mentions that it should be pre-selected list of factors. So if you do have this pre-selected list, please just include to the survey. Do not ask them to write a story for you. Okay, I have some comments I will give a little bit later. And one more group. I believe you were.
No, we kind of worked together because we had the same target groups, but
Okay.
yeah, we. Sorry.
yeah, they also contributed to our.
Okay, but maybe you have some comments.
Yeah, we had a more focused. We were focusing more on the training experience questions, maybe. So we thought that it's really important to check like their expectations and their perception of the training program too, and somehow try to get information out that how useful did they think that this program has like impact on their future. But yeah, we were pretty much on the same page about the open and closed questions.
Okay, good. So it's actually, yeah, you combine two different activities, grants and training activities, that is possible. A few comments, because I actually agree with the majority of what you've said. I prefer, but it's, again, it's not a recommendation, it's my personal preferences. I usually start with the questions related with the project and program and demography put at the end. Because usually your responses could be quite tired, but to the end. So, and they're more likely to answer questions at the beginning that is most important to you. I would actually think very carefully before I ask about the name of the company. Because if you are talking about anonymity, with this question being the first, you would kill your survey, because, and then you ask about profits, people, so I don't know, maybe you're quite lucky in your countries and your businesses will respond, but definitely not in Ukraine, so yours, it's not possible. And for example, in the UK, it's easier if you as a evaluator have an access to the data of the list of the participated companies, you can go to the database and to have information about the rates of turnover and all this stuff, but definitely it's not linked to the survey. So just be very careful with that. You can ask, but maybe at the end, I usually ask about this if company would like to give this. So just remember, you can have a mandatory and non-mandatory questions, so never do this question mandatory. So yeah, grouping employment, so just to be very, very careful. As you mentioned, so like factors, try to pre-select them, but always give opportunity others. Just maybe someone just, you know, give you a very good idea. In terms of bottlenecks, I believe that you do not write this as a bottleneck in the text of your survey, because businesses probably will struggle with what do you mean. So just hampering factors just to make your life easier. With impact, yeah, actually what you put in the demography, for me it's something about impact as well, because if you're asking about the increasing in number of employees, increasing of turnover, it's also about the impact of the program or the grant. So, but just you need to be sure that you put this question like this. So, was it happened because of the project, or it just happened because the company is very successful in the market, or they just do not have competitors? Yeah.
So for impact, I was also talking to my colleagues. I would prefer administrative data that I mean it differs from country to country, but usually you can get company data from the official authority that keeps all the registries, and they provide you data on a turnover, profit for multiple years, also number of employees, and it's more reliable with this type of data. And you could use that to make a counterfactual impact evaluation, but that depends also on what other variables you have at your disposal from that public authority.
So it's actually, it would be my advice, so if you can get this data from somewhere, do not ask people to answer those questions, because first they will be very suspicious businesses, because businesses usually do not like to be asked about their money. whatever it's like turnover or people. In this project, it would be good to ask about support of vulnerable groups, as we discussed, because did you, for example, increase the number of people with disabilities or youth or women or veterans in your employees, something like that, just to capture that. When we're talking about businesses, as I mentioned, I also like the question, would it be possible to do without support of the program, so without that grant? Because I had, for example, one project where that was giving grants to agro-businesses, and it wasn't the fault of the project because it was a project design. So they just distributed all those grants, but when we were talking to businesses, we realized that it wasn't really businesses who were struggling with access to money, because project just gives this decision to the banks to decide, and of course banks credited the most reliable clients who would be absolutely perfect without having those grants. So this is one probably of most important questions. So did the project really bring this value added to this beneficiary, to these businesses, or they would survive without this grant, and these grants are just like a 1/50 of their income or whatever. So just usually ask this question, it will be good. For sustainability, I like your approach when you mentioned, so if they apply again, but I have a little bit of doubt here, because for me, if they would like apply again, it's more about accessibility of the project and of the grant scheme rather than about sustainability. Because if they would like, again, it's easier and then it's really supported them. But also, when you're talking about grants, it's very important to understand if business survive in a year or two. You know, so probably you will need a little bit to reformulate this question. It's a good one, but it will be difficult for you to really attribute answers to your criteria. If it's sustainability, is it relevance, is it accessibility of your program? So just need to be sure what you would like to get from this question exactly.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's a good job. Again, I'm not criticizing, just from my personal experience, how to deal with those businesses and how to formulate things.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.